Shalom V'Racha, and welcome once again to Mitzvah of the Week, brought to you by Parasha Study Plus, a division of Tanakh study. In honor of Shavuot, Chag Shavuot coming, we have Parashat Bemidbar, where not so many mitzvot are in the actual parasha. We have the census. We will be dedicating this week to the mitzvah of Talmud Torah, the mitzvah of Torah study, the hallmark of our religion. So let's get started, as there are a lot of topics to cover. First, let's see in Sefer HaChinuch, where we see mitzvah Taf Yod Tet, mitzvah Talmud Torah. It's a positive mitzvah taseh. It's also found in the 11th mitzvah of Sefer HaMitzvot of Harambam. Mitzvah taseh, lelamed chokhmat HaTorah, lelmod chokhmat HaTorah ulamdah. Kilomar, a person, it's a mitzvah to study and to teach. And we see from Masechet Kiddushin, we'll just interject here, that the mitzvah to learn is directly intertwined with the mitzvah to teach. Only those who have the mitzvah to teach have the mitzvah to learn, as Sefer HaChinuch will highlight here. Ketzad na'aseh hamitzvot. Right, Ketzad, sorry. Na'aseh hamitzvot v'nishmor mima shemena'anu ha'el mimenu v'ladat gam ken mishpetei HaTorah al kivun ha'emet. What is the purpose of learning Torah? That's what the Ketzad means. To do the mitzvot, to stay distant from all of those things that the Torah wants us to stay distant from and not engage in. V'ladat, also to know all of the hukim and the mishpatim of the Torah, and especially kivun ha'emet, the right way and the right path to go in. As we will be reading next week, we'll see. Not next week, in the next Sefer, Devarim, we will see that you read, you will sharply teach your children. Rabbis taught us, these are your students, right? Banim and Talmidim are interchangeable. And also students are also called sons, as we see from Melachim. And the words Vishinantam, what does that mean? Shiyu mesudarim betoch picha. That they should be very arranged in your mouth. It means it should be habit. It should be that person knows what's coming out of his mouth, and they're so familiar with it that it comes right off the tongue. All of the Torah. Adam shvached davar, don't stutter and don't stammer. A person needs to know that know the Torah so well, rather answer him the question right away. Because again, the person should have so much Torah knowledge and be so involved in the Torah, you can answer right away. That's again the goal with this mitzvah. And this mitzvah is mentioned many times and repeated. So bottom line, from framing the mitzvah, we understand what's the purpose. The purpose of the mitzvah Talmud Torah is to know what's in the Torah, keep the mitzvot, distance yourself from sinning, and get to the kivun ha'emet, which can only be done through Torah study. This slide just has what we just read in English, so you can take a pause if you need the English, and take a pause the slide right here and read. The famous Mishnah Masechet Pe'ah, we say this every day in our tefillah, in the Korbanot, where we could just, once we said that this was a mitzvah and we gave the reasoning, we should just understand the magnitude of this mitzvah. Elu devarim she'en lahem shi'ur. The Mishnah very famously tells us these are the things that have no limit, no quantifiable limit. HaPe'ah, leaving a person's the corners of their field. V'habikurim, giving people the first fruits. V'ha'ayon, right? These which is coming up now for Shavuot, when you're bringing gifts and offerings to the temple on the Shalosh Regalim. Gmilut hasadim, which is of course doing righteous deeds for people. V'talmud Torah, and learning of Torah. There's also another list of mitzvot where a person, you eat and enjoy the fruits of those mitzvot here in this world, and the principle that you derive from is still there for you in Olam Haba, meaning you can double hit it. You get rewarded here and rewarded there. Kibud ava'em, respecting parents. Gimilut hasadim, again, righteous deeds. V'havat shalom ben adam lechavero, and some people add ve'ish leishto, when you bring peace between friends and also a couple. Ve'talmud Torah keneged kulam, and the study of Torah is equal to all of these mitzvot. And many Mepharshim say that this could even go on the Resha that we said. But bottom line, what we see here is Talmud Torah is equated with the high, not only equated, equal to, you put Talmud Torah on one side, and all of these other high-value mitzvot that have no shi'ur and that are going to be, a person could enjoy them here and in Olam Haba, Talmud Torah is on the other side of the scale, even weighing it down. Talmud Torah is equivalent to all of these amazing mitzvot. So we just see how important it is to learn Torah. Back to the Sefer HaChinuch, continuing the mitzvah Taf Yotet. We say Shneimar Benechem v'darshu zichrono livracha. Masechet Kiddushin, as we mentioned, Benechem v'lo benotechem. Now we're going to start to get into who is obligated in Talmud Torah. So based on the pasuk, it's men, male children, Benechem v'lo benotechem, and not women. V'chen isha ena chayevet lelamed et bena. Again, she is not obligated, again, as we saw from Masechet Kiddushin, that learning Torah is directly connected to teaching. The woman, the wife, is not obligated to teach her son Torah. If there's a person who is not in the geded, in the system of in the box, in the framework of having to teach, then they do not have to learn. So since it is not the wife's obligation to teach, she does not have to learn. However, she has to also be a very active participant. She should make sure that her children are not ignoramuses, that they're not void of Torah knowledge. Even though she's not commanded to, that she is also she should be a partner in it and make sure she's in the home. She's probably in the home more time than the man is. Even if, let's say, the husband knows more and he's in charge of teaching the child, the woman has to infuse Torah, Yirah, make sure the kids aren't wasting time and making sure that they're learning Torah and keeping up with their studies, especially in school and especially the Judaic studies. She gets a good reward with her toil in this. This is a key point that also Sefer HaChinuch points out. Even though a woman is not obligated in Torah, a woman gets sachar for learning Torah. It's not as good, as large as the sachar as somebody who's commanded to, which is right. Gadol mitzuveh ve'oseh, mishe'eno mitzuveh ve'oseh, which is the man. But nevertheless, she does get a sachar. So it is important in this Sefer HaChinuch to see that if we want the mission to really be accomplished, we need women who are educated in Torah as well, who care about it, who want to teach their children, and they themselves, when they learn, they also get a mitzvah. Let's go to the Rambam in Mishneh Torah, Hilchot Talmud Torah, Perek Aleph, the first halacha Aleph, just to bring this home. Nashim va'avadim uktanim peturim et Talmud Torah. Women, slaves, and minors are pturim. They're absolved from having the mitzvah of learning Torah, which we're going to get into. We're going to see how deep the yoke is of the Torah. They do not have that on them. Aval katan, aviv hayav lelamedot Torah. But when it comes to a minor, the father has the obligation to teach them. Because again, they're not going to just jump in at age bar mitzvah and start loving Torah. You have to start from a young age. And that there is a mitzvah for the father to teach. So the katan, what's the Rambam adding here, is a conduit to the father being able to accomplish his mitzvah of teaching. And a woman does not need to teach her son. That's only, which we mentioned, but again, here's the extra source from the Rambam. Only those who have to teach are the ones that have to learn. And here, just at the end, he says it as Hakol Hayav L'Mod, Hayav L'Lamed. Anybody who has to teach, who has to learn, has to teach. But again, in the Masechet Kiddushin, as we mentioned, has it predicated on that the person who has to teach has to learn. Go back to the Sefer HaChinuch, where now we say, what is the shoresh of this mitzvah? What's the key? What's the root of the mitzvah? Shoresh mitzvah zo yadua. The shoresh of this mitzvah is known. Ki belimud Yadaha Adam Darkei Hashem Itbarach. Only through learning is a person going to understand the way of God and to connect it. Zulato lo yada v'lo yavin. Without this, without it, without learning, they are not able to, you will not know and you will not understand. In harsh words, v'nachshav k'behema. A person without Torah is like an animal. He is not really actualizing his human potential. He is not getting closer to God, which is the job of every single human being. So in that case, so when do you start? Finally, now at this point, we understand that it's mitzvah. It's shakul keneged kol mitzvot about Torah, which we've seen. Talmud Torah is the most important. You have to teach. The father has to teach. Therefore, the father has to learn. The woman doesn't have to, but the woman gets sachar, and she is an integral part of Torah in the home, no doubt. Now we'll go to Shulchan Aruch Yoreh De'ah Siman Resh Mem He Seif He to just get a look at from what time should we start this process. When should we start teaching our children? Me'emata metchil lelamed beno. Right? When is a person going to start teaching his child? Mishiatchil daber matchil lelamedo. Once the child starts to talk, that's when you must start teaching him. What do you start teaching him? Quote, right, Matchil Lamedo, quote, Torah siva lanu Moshe, Morsha Keilat Yaakov. You have to teach him the first words when he can even speak is Torah siva lanu Moshe. We have that famous song. I learned it in this tune. Torah siva lanu Moshe. I don't want to say Torah too many times, right? But that's we teach that right when they get into the Seder. Right when they get into the kindergarten, even nursery, to start singing that. Upasuk rishon Parashat Shema, and also what do you do? Shema Yisrael, right? Also go in ve'ahavta, go do it. But here rishon Parashat Shema, that first line. Ve'achar kach melamedo me'at me'at. Then after that, slowly, ad sheyeh keben shisha, until he gets to 6 years old, or keben shiva, or 7, depending on how smart he is. Ve'az molicho etzel melamdet tinokot. Then you actually give him official classes and having to learn and learn Torah and having to be together with the moreh or with the morah. The Rambam now, back to the Mishneh Torah, Perek Aleph per Halacha Yod Aleph, we say V'chayav l'shalesh et zeman lemidato. So now we understand the age, right? Again, right when they're able to speak, start saying Torah siva lanu Moshe and Shema Yisrael. From that point on, slowly, and then get the person to 6 or 7 years old. Now you're getting them into official classes. So in Limud Torah itself, then how should I divide my time? So the Rambam tells us, "V'chayav l'shalesh et zeman lemidato." You have to split your learning into thirds. Shalish b'Torah shebechtav, a third in actual in Tanakh, right? Torah shebechtav, the written word. Ushlish b'Torah shebe'al peh, and a third in the oral tradition. Ushlish yavin v'yaskil acharit davar bereshito v'yotzi davar midavar v'dame davar ledavar v'yavin b'midot she'atorah nidreshet behen. So first, then he has to learn davar mitoch davar. Davar mitoch davar means he's going to learn inferences from the Torah and from what he learns, which we'll see what that goes to, where he says, until he understands exactly what the ikar of what the Torah wants from him and all of those rules, how the Torah is nidreshet and how it's expounded, all of those, all the 13 midot, and he understands. And he should learn how do I extrapolate from this Torah shebechtav and Torah shebe'al peh. And also things that he learns from oral tradition. All this, how to expound from Tanakh and the oral traditions. And this is what we call Gemara, the Torah Shebechtav. So again, you have the Torah Shebechtav, and then you have the Torah Shebe'al Peh, which were the Mishnayot, and then after that, you're going to go into the Gemara and the actual technicalities. That's the last third. Now the Rambam continues this also and says, Ketzad haya ba'al umanut v'haya osek b'melachto shalosh sha'ot bayom u'v'torah tesha. So what's interesting here is to say that we have to now, I'm being machnisis, we're going to get into it a little bit later in the slides, is that you see how should he divide it up into these splits. You say, look, he has, because we're going to get into Torah and working and learning. Even that Rambam says, how should a person do this? he is osek b'melacha 3 hours, and then he's learning Torah 9. So atana tesha koreh b'shalosh mehen b'torah shebechtav, b'shalosh b'torah sheba'al peh, b'shalosh acharot mitmonem b'da'ato la'avin davar midavar. So 3 hours he should be learning Torah Mikra, Tanakh. 3 hours he should be learning the Torah Sheba'al Peh, the oral tradition, and then 3 hours after that, how to extrapolate and how to take that oral tradition, pull it apart, and learn things from and infer one thing from another, which is called Gemara. So halevai that we should all be doing this. And this is the Rambam is saying, even with working, is 3 hours working and then 9 hours learning. 3 in Mikra, 3 in Torah Sheba'al Peh, 3 in Gemara. Now, what is this talking about? B'tchilat Talmudo. This is in the beginning of the limud shel Adam. Aval k'sheyagdil b'chokhmah v'lo yeh sarich lo l'lmod Torah shebechtav. Says Rambam says this is how a person starts out, but eventually you're going to graduate and not need to do the Torah shebechtav. V'lo la'asok tamid b'Torah sheba'al peh either. Rather, yifaneh kol yamav l'gemara bilvad. Person, according to the Rambam, you should always, when you get to that level, get to the Gemara. Now, nowadays, and many rabbis have said this in our opinion, we start Gemara maybe a little too early, right? If we look in the Mishnah, we're supposed to start at age 15. Most of the times that we're starting people off at age 9 or age 10. So again, you have to go and speak to the Gidolei Torah about how to do it. Many different yeshivot have many different philosophies of how to approach this, especially in modern day. We always have to be involved in Mikra and in Mishnah and know it well. Here what the Rambam is saying, you move on to Gemara only once you've mastered all of the discipline of Tanakh and of Mishnayot, etc. So if we throw a 9-year-old who doesn't know all of the stories, let's say in Tanakh, and hasn't really had mileage in Tanakh, and you're throwing him right into Gemara, that's not really what the Rambam is talking about. He's talking about mastery after Tchilat Talmudo, and sometimes that initial stage can take years or decades if a person is not yet finished it. So again, but understanding that Rambam's goal is to get to the level of where you're inferring one thing from the next and understanding all of the midot shatorah nidreshet bahem, and then devoting all your time to Gemara is the goal at the end of that, but only once you've mastered Tanakh and Mishnah. Here again is that slide just in English so that you can see it, and again, if you want to pause and read it, you can pause it now. Okay, now into Masechet Berachot, which is the very famous machloket as to what should a person do. So now, fine, Torah study is the most important mitzvah so far that we've seen. And what should a person be doing? Should he be working also with learning, or just learning? Because I'm not going to leave money on the table, quote unquote, with sachar, maybe everybody should only be learning all the time. If this is the most important mitzvah, maybe that's what a person should be doing. So let's see. Tanu Rabbanan. This is Masechet Berachot, Daf Lamed Bet, Amud Bet, which is again very famous sugya. As I'm reading this now, I think it's Lamed He Amud Bet, not Lamed Bet. We'll put a little correction. So Tanu Rabbanan. Ve'asafta deganecha. And you shall gather in your grain. Ma Talmud Omar. What is this telling me? Lefi shneimar lo yamush sefer haTorah ze mipicha. Right? Yachol devarim kichtavan. Right? Meaning, how could it be? It says, and I have to gather in the grain. But then the Torah says, don't leave the words of the Torah, not even for 1 minute. Right? And the continuation of that pasuk, vehigita bo yamam v'layla. You have to study Torah day and night. So, meaning, are they to be spent as written, meaning that you should never gather in your grain, never work? Is that how it's supposed to be? Talmud Lomar ve'asafta deganecha. Right? It tells you no, gather in your grain. Hanheg bahen minhag derech eretz. That is Rabbi Yishmael. Rabbi Yishmael is saying, right? Rabbi Yishmael is saying, no, you have to have derech eretz, and you have to set aside time not only for Torah but also for work. That's what Rabbi Yishmael says. What's the other opinion? Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. He says no. Omer efshar adam choresh b'shvat harisha v'zoreya b'shat zeri'ah v'kotzer b'shat katzira v'dash b'shat disha v'zoreya b'shat haruach. He's going to do all of these things when it's time to reap. He's reaping. Plow, sow. He's going to do all of these things and harvest. And now Torah, ma teheh aleha. What's going to be with the Torah? Ela, rather, Rabbi Gamliel has a different way to reconcile the previous Pesukim that we said. How can you have the Asaf Tadaгаnecha to bring in all of your Dagan, and also studying Torah all the time? He says, no, it's talking about two different levels of Am Yisrael. He says, when we're following Hashem in the right way, other people are doing our work for us. Either we're so rich that we're hiring them to do it, they're able to do it by themselves. But bottom line is we're not going to have to do it. Right? These the people that are not of our nation, they're going to be taking care of our flocks and the vineyards and plowing, etc. And when Bnei Israel does not do the ratzon of the makom, right? Then we're going to have to do our own work, that you bring in all of your dagan. So it's a negative, meaning it's referring a negative time when we're not doing what Hashem wants. Then we're going to have to suffer and have to work. Right? So not only that, you're going to have to, when you're really not doing what Hashem wants you to do, you're going to have to do the work of the enemy as well. So again, we see this very famous machloket, as we mentioned, from Rabbi Ishmael versus Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, where no, the ideal is to just be learning the entire time, and then somebody else is going to do the stuff, do the work for you. And all versus no, Rabbi Ishmael says no, you got to do it Torah with derech eretz, and you have to. The way of the world is you have to work, you have to earn your keep, and then of course learn. So let's see very famously the Gemara Masechet Berachot comments. Amar Abaye, right after this, Harbe asu Rabbi Ishmael ve'alta biyadan, Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai ve'lo alta biyadan. Abaye comments and quotes on this. A lot of people did like Rabbi Ishmael, and they were successful both in learning and also monetarily. But mostly here it's focusing on the learning. Ve'alta biyadan, Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai, they tried ve'lo alta biyadan, and they were not successful in their business. And what did they have to do? They had to abandon the Torah study, and therefore it was not considered great. So it seems like from the Gemara, halacha should follow like Rabbi Ishmael, and a person should have a job and make sure that they're working and learning at the same time. What's interesting here is that we're going to see a couple of quick hits by Shulchan Aruch, which are going to talk about the importance of the learning. But I put the slides out of order for a second. Let's go back on this topic of working and learning. Let's see what the Rambam says. Rambam Mishneh Torah, Talmud Torah, Perek Gimel, Halacha Yer Aleph, Ma'ala Gedolahi, L'mishu mitparnes b'maasei yadav. It's the highest of levels. It's a high level for a person to have his own parnasah and not have to rely on other people. Midat Hasidim Arishonim, that's what the Midat Hasidut, the Hasidim Arishonim used to do. That's the highest level. A person works, supports himself, and he learns Torah. Shneimar Yagia Kapecha, the toil of your own hands. Kitochel Ashrecha v'tov lach. Right, it'll be praiseworthy and good for you. What does that mean? Ashrecha ba'olam hazeh. Tov lach le'olam haba, and it'll be the ashrecha of the pasuk means in this world, and the tov lach means in olam haba, which is shekulo tov. So again, the ideal, according to the Rambam, is to obviously be working and learning and get your parnasah from yourself. I just want to do one more word on that. Is that I do believe, though, however, that now in this day and age, that people think that chas v'shalom, the word kolel, is a dirty word, and that's not what the Torah, what the rabbis are trying to say here. The highest level is that a person should do it himself, absolutely, and should strive for that, and that's what we should teach in our schools. You need to have the parnasah. Masechet Kiddushin also says that a father must teach his son a trade to be able to be mitparnes. But if a person wants to go off for a few years and learn, or even he's extremely gifted and this person could be the next gadol, of course, that's what the Kolalim were established for. Obviously, in any system, there are people who abuse the system. Sometimes you can go into a learning program and you see there's guys walking in at 10:30, they're talking for half an hour at the coffee machine. No rabbi from no hashkafa condones that behavior. That's a person wasting time. But the most gifted, we need to have our most gifted people learning in Kolalim, becoming rabbanim, becoming gedolei Torah if they could also do parnasa on the side, now the world is changing. You could do do things online. You could have, or you don't have to have inventory, or even go to the store. There are many ways to now maybe even have the ideal that the Rambam is saying, working 3 hours, learning 9. Person has to get creative. It doesn't mean that a kollel, a learning program, is a negative. If a person, I myself, I went to kollel 7.5 years, and I was totally being mitparnes from the community. If a person wants to become a rabbi, I know what they're talking about, and then to be mezakeh rabim, go out into the workforce as a teacher, as a pulpit rabbi, etc., as a moreh, all those things, that's almost as if nowadays we could say that that's like getting a craft. You have to grade tests, run trips, do projects with the kids, parent-teacher conference. These are jobs. These are not necessarily just praying to be, like as we say, a batlan, which is, again, in the positive way, as the Gemara says it, as just being a person who gets benefit from Torah. Which, again, we're going to see now that Rambam doesn't agree with that. But bottom line is, we need to be tolerant of everyone's side. And again, if we're doing with the right thing, the people who are in kollel doing the right thing, it's a very big ma'alah for the person to do that. If they're talented and they're seeing hatzlacha, and also, but everybody should try to strive for this ideal that in your Torah learning, the best way to do it, very clearly according to the Rambam, according to the Gemara, is a person should have a craft, be supporting themselves, and then add in their learning. Let's see in this slide where we have Shulchan Aruch Yoreh De'ah, Siman Resh Menvad, Seifim Yud Zayin to Kaf. Just, I'll shrink myself down so people can see. Just understanding how important Torah studying is. Number one, when you're in the Bet Midrash, when you've set aside your time to learning. Do not talk anything else except Torah. If a person sneezes, you don't say bless you. Don't waste a second in the Bet Midrash. We scream out about this on Yom Kippur. We're all guilty of it. From how we've forsaken Torah, the yoke of Torah. Woe to us. And the holiness of the study hall is even more holy than the Bet Knesset, and we've spoken about how holy the shul is. So just imagine. Talmud Torah shakul keneged kol mitzvot, as we've mentioned, but here it is in Shulchan Aruch. It's weightier than all of the other mitzvot in the Torah. Hayal fanav asiyat mitzvah ve'Talmud Torah. What happens if a person has, I can accomplish this mitzvah, or I can do Talmud Torah? Again, I have a havruta, let's say 6 o'clock. And now my father comes and tells me, he says, I need you to drive me to the airport. What time? 6 o'clock. Uli. So now I have mitzvat kibud ava'em versus going to the study hall. Rabbi just gave me all these sources. Shakul keneged kol mitzvot, kayemet ba'olam haba, ve'Talmud Torah keneged kulam. Even if kibud ava'em is on that list, Talmud Torah is worth more. So what do you do? So Shulchan Aruch, again, this is a very quick answer, but im efshar lemitzvah leha'asot ayedei acherim. If my brother can take my father to the airport, somebody else can take him. Lo yafsik talmudo. Do not stop from your learning. Ve'im lav, but if not, ya'aseh ha'mitzvah v'yachzor letorato. Then listen, I'm the only person there. My father's stranded. He's got to go there. Sorry, tell my havruta, look, I got to go drive my father. Then I got to come back, and then I got to do it. So again, very practical advice. It's very important. This case comes up a lot. And in order to really understand, look how the Torah has to come and say, look, Torah is so important. Only if there's no one else that can do it, then you can stop them. You can stop the Torah. Seif Yotet, Tehilat Dino Shel Adam Al Talmud Torah. When we go up to Shamayim, the first thing we're going to be asked, the first thing they're going to judge is, as we said, what happened to your Talmud Torah? There's so many ways that we can connect to Torah nowadays, from this type of video, for example, to podcasts, to CDs, to tapes, no more tapes anymore, but let's say CDs, to coming to a shiur, to Zoom classes. The Torah is everywhere, and this is the way that a person is going to be judged. I said, how could it be that a person is not going to go and study Torah? When we go up to Shamayim, we have to be mindful that Hashem is going to ask us, did you study Torah? Kavata itim la Torah. Did you study and did you dedicate time to studying the Torah? And after that, we'll worry about everything else. But Talmud Torah is number one. If we go into that and understand, work backwards, that's what we're going to be asked. We'll dedicate more time to study Torah. Seif Kaf, the Olam Yasok Adam Torah Afilu Shelo Lishma. Now let's say, look, I don't really love Torah. I'm not really loving it. Or let's say, I want to be a Chashub rabbi. I want to have my own podcast. I want to have my own spot. you know what? Let that guy learn. Shemitoch shelo lishma ba lishma. It's so important. Even if it's lo lishma, you'll get there. And we do. I'll even use the strong word. We bribe the kids. We say, come, get tickets, get prizes, get this, get food, get cholent night. You got to pull out all the stops, whatever you can to get the kids to come out and learn. It's a mitzvah, and it's the right way to go, and it's the right way to do it, because that's the only way that we can get more people involved and learning at the level that we want everybody to be learning at. Finally, just want to close with this divrei beracha. It really just speaks to me from the Rambam, who has the merit to study Torah. The Rambam teaches us this in Perek Gimal Halacha Aleph. B'shlosha ketarim nichteru Yisrael. There are 3 crowns that Yidnei Yisrael were crowned with: Keter Torah, Keter Kehuna, and Keter Malchut. The crown of Torah, the crown of the priesthood, right, of Kehuna, the Kohanim, the Keter Malchut, and of kingship. Keter Kehuna Zachabo Aharon. Either you're a Kohen or you're not. You're from Zera Aharon, you get that. Keter Malchut Zachabo David. Either you're from David, right? Kohen can't be the Mashiach. He can't be the king. Only either you can be a king or from the lineage of David, or you can be a Kohen. Keter Torah Hare Munach Ve'omed Muchan Lechol Israel. But the Keter of Torah is there for every single person. Shneimar Torah Sivalanu Moshe Morasha Kehilat Yaakov. Morasha, it's the inheritance of the entire Kehillah of Yaakov. Kol Mishi Yitzeh Yavo V'Yitol. Anybody who wants it, come and get it. And that's really our motivation. And davar omed b'fnei haratzon. And nothing stands in front of a person who wants it. Get out there, want it, and before this holiday of Shavuot, Matan Torah, go out and grab your chelek in Torah. Shabbat Shalom and Tizku L'Shanim Rabot.